This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon. It's just me and you today. Oftentimes I'll have a guest on here to explain what's going on in Michigan, but I'm going to take this one myself. I'm going to give everyone the week off. It's Christmas week. We're shooting this the day after Christmas, and I just got a lot to say this morning, so I'm going to hop right to it. So now we sit here the day after Christmas, about a month and a half after Trump won, and now it's clear that the fight against the Uniparty has just begun. We saw the first battle last week, about 10 days ago, with the continuing resolution. There was 1,500 pages of pork, giveaways, and knee-bending that did not speak to Republicans having power, Republicans coming into Washington next month holding all the gavels. It just didn't make sense that people with that much power would use that little of it. It was too obvious that something was fishy. House Speaker Mike Johnson's eyes were a little bit too darty. It was all very weird, and so Donald Trump spoke up. The big bill was shaved down into a smaller bill. That passed, and everybody could say they won. In the end, that's a minor skirmish compared to what's coming. The war that's next is clear, and it popped off over Christmas on X. Somehow along the way of building a Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the men deputized by President Trump to make our government smaller, decided that America First means expanding the pipeline for H-1B workers from Visa. These are the supposedly high-skill immigrants America can't survive without. And so we don't have to go looking for the next battle or the next war. That has revealed itself. On the left and the right, America has a mass immigration consensus, which is really a cheap labor consensus, and it's one that dates back to our colonial roots. But it's no longer appropriate in 2024 and 2025. So the American Uniparty has a cheap labor consensus. And if we don't shatter it in the years to come, it won't really matter who won 2024. But before we take on this internal battle, just one quick word of caution about the left, our actual enemy. See, we can discuss these things among ourselves and no one gets too offended. We know that these are all discussions among and between Americans who love the country. We know that what unites us under the big tent is our fear of the communists. We know that whether you're religious or free or a libertine, or whether you're a gun guy, whether you're a businessman, we know that none of our ambitions were safe under a communist regime. And so it makes perfect sense that with that threat somewhat dissipated, at least for a moment, that we would start dividing up the spoils of victory. This is what you do when you win power. But just a quick word on the left. So Kamala Harris just lost the election, right? Democrats just lost. They lost the presidency. They lost the Senate. They lost the House. They lost everything you could lose. Have you seen any self-reflection on the left ever since Harris lost? Have you seen any fights? Have you seen any circular firing squads? Not really, right? Let me ask that question another way. Why do you think Kamala Harris is the top Democrat in 2028? We all saw it. We all saw that Kamala Harris was too lazy and entitled to run hard for 100 days when $1 billion was handed to her. We all know that she's not capable of doing a 2-year campaign. So why is she the top Democrat for 4 years from now? It's because Democrats don't think they did anything wrong. They think it's just a matter of marketing. They think they're all right on ideas. They think they're all right on policy. And if you don't agree with them, it's you who needs to change. And so on its face, it looks like they lost. But I'm trained to look for the dog that's not barking. And when Trump won in 2016, I saw Democrats panic. I saw fear of Donald Trump and what he might do. I saw even some self-reflection of, hey, maybe we don't understand this country as much as we thought we did. I don't see any of that right now. I have no reason to think that Democrats are going to stop doing what they did to lose the election were they to get power in their hands again. And so if you hear me say in 2028 that that election is the most important election of our lives, just like I just said in November, that's because it'll be true then too. Until we kill off the communist impulses of the Democrat Party, the blue team is unsafe at any speed. Joe Biden showed the damage that one bad president can do in 4 years. We have to assume that Biden was installed to do exactly what he did, to weaken and destabilize America by allowing people and drugs and third world mindsets across the southern border by the millions. Any Democrat who's elected president would likely do the same. You may remember Bill Clinton as a moderate. Bill Clinton was the first president I remember as a kid who was born in 84, and you kind of start seeing things when you're 8, 9, 10 years old. But you must also remember that Bill Clinton was a Southerner from Arkansas. You must also remember that in the 24 years between 1969 and 1993, a Democrat had only held the White House for 4 of them. What Clinton knew is that that Democrat, a fellow Southerner, Jimmy Carter, was replaced by Ronald Reagan. Reagan did 2 terms. Bush 1 did 1 term. And so then Bill Clinton comes in and takes power in that world, where Republican ideas were seen as more legitimate and Democrats were seen as absolutely nuts. This is why that Sister Souljah moment in 1992, when he spoke out against the cop-killing lyric, was so important. Because before 1992 and after it, what we've seen is a Democrat Party that lives on the extremes and thrives on the extremes. Bill Clinton basically forced them into winning against their will by taking on a moderate stance. Whether or not Clinton was a good president, was a moderate president, is quite beside the point. He knew what game he had to play to get power and to stay in power, and he played it. And that game was be a moderate. No Democrat before him, no Democrat since has done the same thing. But there's a problem on the right side of American politics. We know the problem on the left. We talk about it all the time, but we suffer part of the blame too. This is going to be a little uncomfortable to hear, but you need to hear it. You need to understand it, and we need to fix it. Cheap labor is the ultimate American dream. Our friends down south once had it for free. They call it the lost cause. I believe the dream of cheap labor is one that runs directly counter to the well-being of America and Americans. Until America first puts Americans first, we'll be just another economic zone. One nation under GDP. We rejected communism on the November ballot, but we also rejected one nation under GDP. We want government to get off the back of business in America, but we don't want it to reside in the pocket of business either. I think about politics as kind of the paradox of the cookie jar. When I was a young man, I couldn't even vote in that first election, the 2000 election where George Bush won. My first vote was cast at 20 for Bush's re-election campaign in 2004. And I remember as a young man, I had those libertarian leanings. What I wanted from Bush was for him to shatter the cookie jar. Instead, what I saw Bush do was put the hands of his friends into the cookie jar. He didn't change the dynamic of government. He just put different players in the path of payment. And so we elected Donald Trump to do what George W. Bush refused, to shatter the cookie jar. And so as I look at 2025 and beyond, I don't side with the businessman or the bureaucrat. And so as we look to 2025 and beyond, I don't side with the businessman and I don't side with the bureaucrat either. I believe the bureaucrat is actually a big part of our problem in America. But I also believe that the businessman's problems are his problem, not society's problem. And those problems, say short staffing, which is experienced by everything from IT firms to police departments to political campaigns. Short staffing, these problems are best solved by the companies themselves. And so your problem, Mr. Businessman, Mr. of Chamber of Commerce, is not my problem. Your problem is certainly not our problem. But when you import mass amounts of immigrants, now your fix has become my problem, and now we got a problem. Mass immigration is another form of corporate welfare. It's another instance of our government socializing the costs of business, but privatizing the benefits to just a few. It's crony capitalism, simple as that, and it's as wrong on the right as it is on the left. And so on the left, we're told that farmers can't find Americans to pick lettuce. And so we must import poor but hardworking foreigners to do the work that Americans will not. Since the end of slavery, Democrats have been asking, but who will pick the cotton? Today they ask, who will pick the avocados? They present rising prices of avocado toast as if it's a national emergency. On the right, we're told that tech companies can't find Americans smart enough to keep IT networks running, and so we must import smart and hardworking foreigners to do the work Americans cannot. It's weird, yes, that the left and right fight over everything, but when it comes to mass immigration, they have a consensus. When it comes to mass immigration, they use the same arguments. They tell the same narratives. And that narrative is Americans are too fat and opioided for hard labor jobs, and Americans are too stupid and lazy for tech jobs. We are told that Americans cannot and will not use either our minds or our bodies to find prosperity. And when you hear both arguments used, so we can't find poor people to work in the fields, we can't find smart people to work in IT, when the problem on both ends of the scale is the same thing, your spider senses should tingle. You should say, that sounds odd to me. So with the IT argument and the H-1Bs and these supposedly high-skilled visas, we're told the same thing we're told about fruit pickers. Who will pick the avocados? Who will tell you to unplug your computer and replug it back in? And so the logic of the left brings 15,000 people to Michigan every year on temporary visas to pick fruit. The logic of the right brings nearly 12,000 people to Michigan on H-1B visas. Those were the supposedly talented people who can't be found, trained, or groomed stateside. They can only be found in Bangalore. And somehow all these tech companies don't just move to Bangalore, where they be closer to this amazing pipeline of workers. No, the only thing we could ever do is get the people from Bangalore to America. And if you believe that, then you believe in the Uniparty consensus. You believe in the lost cause. You believe that cheap labor is the health of the state. I don't believe that. The people listening to this podcast don't believe that. The people who believe in America First message don't believe that. What we believe is that that's 27,000 people in Michigan being paid lower wages than Americans would be. That's not even counting outright illegals, without which Michigan would be a shrinking state. That's 27,000 future Democrats who might vote in Michigan, so long as they're willing to sign an honor pledge. And unlike that voter in Ann Arbor, that Chinaman who voted in November, if they don't go back and report it themselves, that voter fraud will probably not be discovered. And so it's not an exaggeration to say that mass immigration is viewed as the health of the state. This is a uniparty belief. Joe Biden believes it. Nancy Pelosi believes it. Vivek believes it. Elon believes it. Two sides of the same coin. Two wings of the same bird. The mass immigration consensus in America is really a cheap labor consensus. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You might have found it true when John McCain said in 2000 that Americans refused to pick lettuce. But when you started hearing that same narrative repurposed for IT jobs, you should be suspicious. Well, now is the time to be suspicious. And let's just take that argument to the absolute extreme. We're told that we should want the best person for the job no matter where they come from. So if you think we need the best people for the job regardless of their provenance, then you must think that America needs the best president it can get, regardless of where that person comes from. I mean, after all, we only have 300 million people in America. The world has 8 billion. Surely there's some genius of government that we're being denied because we have this little snit about insisting that the American president be an American. If that argument doesn't work, that we need to open up the presidency itself to whatever talent finds its way to 1600 Pennsylvania, if we don't need a president of foreign extraction, please explain to me like I am 5 why we need the IT guy. You should be suspicious, and you should be disgusted by the way people are talking about our fellow Americans when they talk about these foreign workers. Jamie McGregor, a factory owner in Springfield, Ohio, pissed off a lot of people with his remarks on Haitian immigrants to the town. There's about 20,000 of those immigrants. McGregor, the factory owner, says he found great workers among the Haitians, perhaps even better than he could find among Americans. McGregor said they come to work every day, they don't cause drama, they're on time. I wish I had 30 more. He added that they're drug-free. We've been trained to take these accounts at face value. We've been trained to turn our cheek at the insults directed at the American worker. Of course we're too lazy and drugged up to find work, we say. And in so doing, we agree to our own degradation in a country that does not benefit ourselves and our sons. Whether it's manual labor or laptop jobs, the same narrative applies, as if the argument is designed to apply to any and every job on earth, including the presidency. I mean, heck, we hear about police departments all over Michigan that need workers. Should they be allowed to hire immigrants as well? What about the prosecutor's office? What about prisons? They need prison guards. Should they be allowed to? I mean, if these people are needed for IT, where aren't they needed? And if the argument doesn't apply to the presidency, how does it apply to IT? It's clear that no one has been made to think any of this stuff through. These arguments have gone so unchallenged for so long that that's the slop we're given. Those arguments sound like they're written in ChatGPT. They haven't faced the fire and the scrutiny that they're going to face in the new year. Arguments that apply in every situation aren't arguments at all. They're narratives. And it's clear that nobody thought this narrative through because it hasn't been challenged in a while. If you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Mass immigration is the hammer. American-style wages and compensation is the nail. The hammer is here to bang the nail down as fast and efficiently as it can. So whether it is IT jobs or fruit picking, the reason the argument is the same is because the hammer serves the same purpose: to bang down, to suppress American wages. We can't make America great again until we put Americans first again. It was about a century ago that Henry Ford, the man who put the world on wheels, pivoted. In the earliest days of Ford Motor Company in the 1910s, Ford relied heavily on foreign labor. Then, around the turn of the decade, the 1920s, Ford replaced them. He embraced black American labor, even putting out feelers down south. Ford played a major part in the Great Migration, which my grandfather, Roosevelt Hunter, took part in. Without it, my family wouldn't be here. Ford took my hometown, Inkster, under his wing. This was the Henry Ford American plan. His descendants would do well to embrace it. Instead, today Ford has about 3,300 H-1B employees. Instead, Ford is partnering with a Chinese firm to build EV batteries in Marshall. When Henry Ford wanted to build EVs, he hired Thomas Edison. When Bill Ford wants to build EV batteries, he calls Xi Jinping. What's wrong with this picture? Except for everything. Henry Ford had it right, and Bill Ford has it so very wrong. At its best, Michigan was the house that Henry Ford built. At its worst, Michigan is the globalized mess we know today. Michigan is a place where Chinese companies take a sudden interest in building in our heartland. Never in Detroit, manufacturer to the world, only in the heartland. Where Michigan, under Gretchen Whitmer, partners with the World Economic Forum on advanced manufacturing. Where Detroit, under Mike Duggan, also partners with the forum, this time for urban transformation. Transformation. Where our governor washed down her Dorito communion by spending Thanksgiving week sipping sangrias in Spain, supposedly on an economic mission. I have a modest proposal. I want Michigan for Michiganders. I want America for Americans. Detroit in its heyday was the model of a strong America. We put the world on wheels, and then we created the weekend and the middle class in the process. You want to see prosperity? Make Detroit build again. We did this by paying men real wages, the wages that can support an entire family. Importing millions of people willing to work for less does not help that cause. Importing thousands would be too many. Honest work doesn't require college degrees or ridiculous certifications, and whatever the job is, American men can be trained for it and trained to do it and put to work. This is how companies have operated since the beginning of time. None of this entails building a pipeline from Port-au-Prince or Bangalore. For all we hear about the blessings of immigration, you'd think countries like Haiti and India would reflect all this talent we keep hearing about. If India's best are leaving home to become IT indentured servants in America, they should return home immediately and water their own grass. You want to make Detroit great again? Do what Henry Ford did. We need another American plan, and our vice president, our incoming vice president, J.D. Vance, is the man to deliver it. We don't need a policy shift. We need a value shift wherein Americans benefit from in-group preferences, not foreigners. Call it America for Americans. If you've survived these last 30 years of globalization, by now you know. You'd rather overpay your neighbor than buy cheap Chinese crap at Walmart. Well, we need to apply those values across the board to both the low-skill immigration and this high-skill immigration we're told we can't do without. J.D. Vance gets it. J.D. Vance went to Ohio State because he couldn't get into Michigan. He bounced back from that disappointment and became a Marine and went to Yale Law School. Since then, he wrote a bestseller, Hillbilly Elegy, became a U.S. Senator in Ohio, and soon he's going to be vice president. If we're not making plans and programs to raise up more J.D. Vances, then we are not America first, and there will not be a revival. We are told that Jeet will save America. We're told that Julio's hands feed America. We're told that Jamie's factory wouldn't run without Juan. None of this is remotely true. Companies embrace mass immigration because it's cheaper than paying Americans an honest wage. They embrace visa labor because it's easier than building a talent pipeline stateside. They embrace indentured servants because it's cheaper than hiring an American and paying American wages. America first has to mean something more than, boy, we sure do have a lot of successful IT companies. If America is not a country designed to uplift its people, it will fail. And Jeet, and Julio, and Juan, and their considerable talents won't be able to fix it. If we do not build an American economy for Americans, we lose. Programming note, next week it's the last week of 2024. And it's also going to be the start of 2025. Uh, we recently had on Jim Runstead, a state senator who's running to chair the Michigan GOP. Next week, we're going to hear from two others who are running in that race. We're going to hear from Jamie Rowe, a GOP consultant who lives in Southeast Michigan. And then we're going to hear from Meshawn Maddock. We might do a little bonus one, or I might just, sum it up as a little video column. But we're also going to sum up 2024. What have we learned? What are we going to do better? What do we need to do to win the Battle of Michigan in 2026? We're going to talk about all those things next week. So hope you had fun. Hope it was a blessed Christmas. It's going to be a great new year. We're going to see to it. And we'll see you very soon.